Okay, now you're ready.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Tuesday, April 4th, 2023 meeting of the East Long Meadow Planning Board. In attendance this evening, Wes Denver, Cassandra Tereswell, George Kingston, and Joe Rose, myself, Josh Torsha. Just want to see if anybody in the audience recording this evening. We do have daily recording for purposes, so there is one audio recording. Is there anybody else recording this? Hearing none or seeing none, we will move on to the approval of the minutes, March 21st, 2023 meeting minutes. Has anyone had a chance here to take a look at them? Comment, additions, revisions, changes? Motion to approve. The motion has been made. Second. And seconded to approve the March 21st, 2023 meeting minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Those opposed? Abstentions? That carries. All right. First item is
case SBRW 2023-11. Request for a site plan review waiver for Jake's Gun Room Inc. online retail store headquarters at 58 Bond Ave, Suite 3. Assessors parcel ID 28A-53-B-1. Located in an existing structure in the business zoning district. Applicant Armand Bosher, PO Box 801, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028.
That is me. Is there any specific questions you guys had about it? Or like that down there?
So basically, do you want to just kind of talk briefly to the public about like sort of what it is, what the business is, basically?
It's basically listing everything online, military collectibles through eBay, websites, antique shows, flea markets. There won't ever be like a retail store like people going in and out. It would strictly be either online or at a third-party venue. And it's basically just a part-time basis of selling stuff.
So there's no like actual contents aren't in your home or no.
It won't be in the business, no. Like I might have like a display item just for that purpose, but I won't be selling from that location.
Okay.
If anything does sell, I would bring it to like the post office or UPS or something like that.
And you're the only person.
Yeah,
it's just more about the home office function.
In theory, yes. It's just
Pretty straightforward. Second motion to approve.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Further discussion. Hearing all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. That carries.
thank you.
Have a great evening.
You too. Thanks, sir.
Good luck.
All right, next up.
Case SBRW 2023-12, request for site plan review waiver for the installation of 2 electric vehicle charging stations at 60 Shaker Road, Assessors parcel ID 27-170-0, located in the business zoning district. Applicant Marthy LLC, PO Box 91199, Springfield, Mass. 01139.
Matthew Tutorello. He's got his hand up, so.
Oh, yeah.
Feels good.
Hello.
Hi, Matthew. Good evening.
Good evening.
Are you
Sorry.
good?
Is your audio turned up?
Sweetie, I'm on now.
Matthew, we can see you and we can now hear you. Are you able to hear us?
You can hear me?
I'm sorry?
You can't hear me?
Now we can.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
It's a slow connection.
Okay. So just, if you could just briefly kind of go over the proposal of the two proposed parking spots, EV's parking spots.
So I can,
Kind of fill us in.
yeah, so he had originally just called me and asked, I think he wants,
There he is.
the property owner wants to install just,
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I think,
Sometimes with Zoom on a phone, you have to go in and out.
yeah, I get it, I feel that.
So Bailey, the planning
Yeah.
director, is filling us in.
Yeah, he was about to kind of explain. the-
Okay.
so I asked him to provide the board with a parking plan, including the EV spots. That's in your packet as well, so you can see where they're going to be located on the site. This is the same site that we approved this launch, the second story a couple weeks ago. So that's pretty much it, though. It's just two EV stations.
So I fully support of charging stations in town and applaud you for being one of the first commercial properties to do it. Thank you.
Oh, happy to. I'm excited too.
I think it's a good opportunity. You know, it's something pretty new. I don't even think we have a lot sort of on the books about charging.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it's developing technology in terms of regulation. There's a lot of developing, so it's really hard to nail something down quickly. So,
Interesting discussion.
yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve. I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That carries. Thank you for bearing with us there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
A little later. Have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
Case ZN 2023-02 for the purpose of amending and clarifying the Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaws, Section 450-3.0, Section 450-3.3, Section 450-5.6, Article 9, and Table 3.1, Schedule of Use Regulations. Petitioner, Town of East Long Meadow Planning Board, 60 Center Square, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01028, continued from 3/07/2023.
So Billy, I know you had given us sort of a new memorandum, some new information. We will floor at least address that first.
Yeah, so I just wanted to provide the board with a response and public, it's online, so anyone who has concerns on this can find everything online. Just so the board is aware and the public as well. We did update the bylaw webpage on the website, so there's a lot more information. It's a little bit clearer, a lot easier to find things on the town's website. So this information and anything that we add to it or subtract in the future, any amendments we make will be posted there as well. So through the process of the public hearings. So to kind of, I guess, I just want to give a brief overview of the concerns, and the responses to those concerns. So I outlined everything that was discussed in the last meeting on March 7th. The first concern was regarding public participation generally in the review process. Multiple members and a couple members of the public had expressed concern over the lack of public participation or public notice in regards to a site plan review for a business coming in that wouldn't require a site plan review. And my response to that is currently that's kind of the case already. We just had 2 waivers that were just approved, and there weren't any public notices sent out for that other than the public agenda that's posted 48 hours before. So realistically, we're not really changing that much in terms of public input regarding small projects. The second concern was regarding the board giving up power or losing certain, approval powers. And again, that's not really the case because the site plan review generally is non-discretionary. It's a non-discretionary decision that really requires technical knowledge that the planning director position should have before they're hired. So truthfully, it kind of strengthens that point a little bit more that someone with technical knowledge is doing the technical review of a non-discretionary decision. So we're not talking about a special permit where it requires multiple members of the public to be on a public board to make certain decisions for the public. This is just, again, a non-discretionary decision. The third concern is regarding business regulations generally, specifically with business certificates. So as I stated in the last meeting, the site plan review waiver is not a mechanism to regulate tenancy of a building. That's not what site plan is for. That's not what a waiver is for. The business certificate is really the vehicle that we should be using as a town, as a municipality, as a regulating authority to regulate businesses coming in. That being said, there was a concern raised that some businesses can come in without, or might come in without applying or obtaining a business certificate. And to that, I will say again, it's an enforcement issue more than it is an issue of the application and review process itself. So while I understand that concern, it's the case right now as well that people can do things without going through the proper channels to do so. That is obviously illegal and they shouldn't be doing that, but that's what enforcement is for. So the other concerns were just general concerns regarding the design review committee. That was just generally that the design review committee has an important role, which I agree with. But that being said, 2 points to that. The appointment of committee members is really difficult throughout municipalities generally, committees, boards, commissions. It's difficult to find people that are willing to take the time and volunteer for those positions. And on top of that, I would just say that the design review should be baked into site plan review, as many municipalities already do, or it also was recommended in 2010 through PVPC's comprehensive zoning review that they did for the town, that we, rather than making it a requirement for all or making it a contingent on whether the board wants to do it or not, we make it specific to certain zoning districts rather than all zoning districts, or when the board decides that it's a big enough project that we should have it. It should be, again, just providing more triggers that are in writing so it's clear to the applicant before whether or not design review should be a part of their application. And then lastly, the last general concern was just the lack of criteria for parking requirements or waiving parking requirements. And to that, I agree, and I just want to inform the board that I am pursuing a grant to hopefully allow the town to work with a consultant to review the town's parking regulations as a whole, including utilizing such criteria for waivers. And again, that's the whole point of this site plan review amendment, is to provide criteria for and certain triggers for the individual site plan review mechanism. So with all of those concerns in mind, I did have a couple of changes and additions to my proposal. The first is just adding the not applicable or NA definition that we have in the use table that I proposed in the use table. Add that to section 3 of chapter 450, where all of the other definitions are as well. And then adding the language that I have here that the planning board should make a decision on an appeal within 21 days of receiving such appeal. That was in regard to a concern that John had with there being no timeline on an appeal being made on the planning director's decision on whether a site plan review is a minor or needs to be a full site plan review. So with that, my recommendation tonight is to, again, just I'm asking the board to recommend to the town council that these amendments with the proposed changes and additions, and also just send it to the town council if the board has no further concerns or questions regarding the changes.
So I'll bring it back to the board. Does anybody have questions?
Who is the enforcement person for business certificates?
In terms of enforcement, I'm not 100% sure who would necessarily, I mean, it depends on what you mean by enforcement.
A business goes into a building in the industrial park.
Yeah.
Okay. They're a subsidiary or the branch of the business that's based elsewhere. Okay, they don't need to get the loan to do this. They also apply for business certificate because they got a certificate elsewhere. Who goes in and tells them that they have to get a business certificate?
So, I'm not sure if it's necessarily set in writing anywhere in the bylaws, but we have had that situation in the past couple months. And our zoning enforcement officer, the building commissioner, has gone to that business. They applied for a business certificate and then went through the process. In terms of business certificates, generally they're issued through the clerk's office. So that process is housed in the clerk's office, but goes through many departments for review. So,
Who gives the answer, who enforces it?
the zoning enforcement officer, I mean, it's not set in stone, again, but generally,
But it falls.
it has been the zoning enforcement officer.
I have something to say, but I'm just trying to make sure I approach it in such a certain way. Going back and forth between I was offended by this or I was confused by this. So one, there was a lengthy discussion about how to maintain some level of public participation. You're just right. With that being said, town staff could utilize the town website to post a list of businesses that have received a business certificate. So that is where would that end up in here in the proposed changes? And I really would have thought that a little more consideration would have gone into the fact that I've received this request on X day. You have 7 days to, respond. Here's how you can respond. Otherwise, we'll make a determination. This just says we could utilize the town website. How are you going to utilize the town website? Where is it going to be built into the changes proposed and be codified? I mean, that's not mentioned anywhere. And then I am a little confused or concerned about restructuring design review. Say the lack of people willing to serve is not a reason to get rid of it. And I'm going to give you a specific example. So while we were working on the, I don't know the perfect language, the mixed use housing at 330 Chestnut Street, I don't know what the title ended up being. Every single serving member of the planning board said if we couldn't find people, we would volunteer to staff that up. because we had real concerns to make sure that it was gonna look appropriate to the town of East Long Meadow. So under no circumstances am I willing to vote to get rid of a design review committee. I could see your idea of having it for certain zones. I'll buy that all day long, but I'm not interested in disbanding it. And then I'm all in favor of having an independent consultant look at what the town's parking regs are. All for that. I think that makes a great deal of sense, because during my 5 or 6 years, we've never really kind of studied a change to that. Now, how long? We've been on 13 years in a row.
Yeah, and
You've studied that.
in addition to that, there's recently an article in the Wall Street Journal about most parking formulas are overly generous with parking,
Yeah.
and that people are finding that they can get use less parking and have more room for other things.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that it's important to review that.
Yeah. But I'm not in favor of getting rid of design review. I want to see some structure put into place on notifying the public that someone has filed for a site plan review waiver. And then 7 days later, if you don't get no comment, if you don't get any comments, go ahead and approve it. But there still needs to be a level of public notice, I think is probably the best word to use.
So basically like an appeal process as a company.
No, not even an appeal process. Just on October 7th, we received this request. Put it on the town's planning website. If there are no comments on this, we're likely to approve it 7 days later. Something like that. If you get no comments, boom, it's approved.
So it's like a conditional approval, and then 7 days later, it's a definite approval.
Just like a notification, like, hey, this happened.
Do you have any comments?
Yeah.
Sure. It doesn't mean it's automatically going to get approved, but it might be a good way for at least the public to say, hey, when you're thinking of approving this, can you think of making them strike, the front of the building, or put up handicap parking, or something, just kind of like battling on here, but, that type of thing. Instead of come in, boom, it's approved. And I trust Bailey's judgment on approving what needs to be approved. We are local government. People still want a say.
So, So generally, I understand what you're saying, but I find it very difficult to justify. That's not exactly what I'm trying to say. I don't understand, I guess, the pushback on the small projects that aren't going to require extra parking spaces. We have all these triggers in place. So anything I'm approving without bringing it to the board, anything that would be approved without public notice, would not be anything where they could say, well, it needs to have an ADA spot. That's already regulated. So certain things like that, in a small project, we're not talking anything big at all. And again, all of those conditions and triggers are written into the bylaw. All of that is written down. So I have to follow what is in the regulation, period. Regardless of what the members of the public say. That's what a non-discretionary decision is. So, and the same is to be said for the planning board in the current process. So, I understand what you're saying, but I also don't understand why it is so significant when the specific trigger points are so small. And we're not talking about anything that would be a massive change to a specific site.
So I think I gave the example last time. So there's a very small brick strip business just before Coffee on North Main Street. There's a little doggy grooming place, there's an antique place, and there's a tattoo place. My example was, people park in front of there willy-nilly, and they're blocking the sidewalks all the time. So if you get a change of use, the antique store goes out and they put in a who knows what. I would like to be able to have the opportunity, if I see that on the town website, to let you know, hey, I think they should strike that or put up a sign that says, don't block the sidewalk, which they do routinely. Now, I agree, you still have to approve it, but wouldn't it be nice if you told the property owner, hey, I've got a complaint from Joe Blow, neighbor, and this is what they're seeing, and maybe you could do that? And it would make everybody's life a little bit easier.
So, yes, I agree that you should be able to do that, and you are able to do that. You're able to speak with the zoning enforcement officer personally to make that complaint, and he can enforce the zoning code and the other bylaws to the degree that it's written in our bylaws, and he can do that. That's the current mechanism to do that. So for the current owner or the current use, you can make that complaint now. And then when we go to approve future ones, that complaint will be on file for that property, and we would see that.
I think you and I are going to agreeably disagree with each other. That's okay. That's democracy.
Also, I think it's great to put in a specific number of days. I think it was just good just to make it more clear. I generally, I think I'm very cognizant of, I don't want to see the public not able to participate in it, but at the same time, we are talking about things that technically go public hearings. I think they still have a process, but I'm wrestling with it. Design review. I think you bring up a good point, but of course, it doesn't necessarily needs to go away on that reason. Ultimately, I think it comes down to whether we think the design review committee actually, if they were to put Indians in a situation, would be able to produce what we're thinking. And I know historically it's been used in the past. I've never seen it being used. Though I've only been doing it for a couple of years. But so I think if we couldn't find people, ourselves step into it, most likely. So those are kind of my thoughts. I'm still pretty or at least simply recommending it. I've seen one councils that. Yes, this is a public hearing. Would anybody from the public like to speak now? Have any questions, comments?
And there's somebody, but there's no,
Somebody raised their hand.
I don't see a hand raised, so, sorry. No, he's gone. I scared him off.
Yeah, I'm scared.
Took one look at this mug and said,
So I think we've had a pretty good discussion of where we can go and see it.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion has been made to
Second.
close public hearing. Second. All those further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Abstentions. Okay, so it's public hearing has been closed.
For the purposes of further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion's been made.
Second that.
Seconded. Any further discussion? This would be, just to review, this would be a recommendation to the town council, subject to their final approval. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Nay. Motion fails by 3 to 1.
I do want to just compliment Bailey. I mean, you are bringing us really valid stuff. And I love the idea that you're looking at everything in the zoning ordinance and trying to get it, where it should be, more up to date, more user friendly. I applaud you on all of that. Not vote for everything, but I do applaud what you're doing. So,
All right, next item, Mr. Clerk.
case ZN-2023-03 for the purpose of amending the Town of East Long Meadow zoning bylaw, section 450-11.2, terms defined in table 3.1, schedule of use regulations to include self-service storage and indoor self-storage facilities. Petitioner, Town of East Long Meadow Planning Board, 60 Center Square, East Long Meadow, Mass. 01228.
So I think I know, Bill, you addressed one amendment that was made. Didn't know if you want to say this on other updates.
There hasn't been any change to this, other than, from the submission on March 2nd, everything has remained the same to the board. Just generally an overview, self-storage, and actually I was going through past minutes today, just looking for something else, and saw that the board had kind of had a discussion on this particular topic, adding self-storage to our use table, into the bylaws, and potentially regulating self-storage in terms of screening back in 2020. So just 3 years ago, in March of 2020. So it's not a new idea to the board. And this is, again, just a proposal. I have received from Tom Reedy, he's also here tonight, some suggested changes to my proposal. So I just got that today, so I can send that over to the board. But and if you want to, John, he's here, so he can speak to that. But that's pretty much all tonight. So,
Does anybody have any thoughts or comments before I open it? Hearing none, we will bring down public hearing. So if anybody would like to speak, if they'd like to speak, they'd be able to come up.
If you want to come up.
I can yield to the counselor if you don't mind.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just
So Tom, would you mind if you put that chair up sort of next in front of George and Bailey, and then I can kind of get you all in. Sorry that we're
speak. Yeah, just
I'll do my best.
at a kind of a bad rate here.
Yeah, no, not at all. For the record, Tom Reedy, attorney with Bacon Wilson. I'm out of the Amherst office. And I apologize for sending it so late, but I said something to the town planner a little earlier today. And by earlier, I mean probably or something. So that you don't have it, if you don't mind, I've provided it. Sorry, I've give this to you, and I'll like to see. So what I did was I just really two overall comments. One was relative to the definitions. And so I'll focus on that first, and then second is as to the permitting path. And so as far as definitions goes, what I suggested that you do is you have an indoor self-storage definition and then a self-service storage facility definition. When you look at how or what can be stored in each, there was a little bit of a difference. And, for example, the indoor self-storage says for the storage of household goods, excess supplies, and archived records as examples. I don't know if that's vestigial from the first time you had talked about indoor self-storage, which I understood was probably more relative or connected with maybe a mixed use or a residential development, and there would be some indoor self-storage. So that seems like that would have been an appropriate definition here, kind of taking a step back and saying, well, now that you're regulating it in the I and the IGP zoning districts, I tried to mimic and really did mimic what definition of what's stored in the self-service storage facility. So instead of those items that I mentioned, which may be seen by some as confining or exhaustive, just to open it up to say for the purposes of storing and removing personal property. So a little bit broader. So that was the first change. The second change, and I appreciate that Mr. Mitchell had included the suggestion about a majority of the storage units being accessed from within the building, because there could be some where there could be access from the exterior. Instead of having it not visible, that just seemed, in just an opinion, prohibitive. And so instead of that, saying that they have to be on the ground floor, just so, in your mind's eye, you couldn't have a multi-story building with a second or third story access, so just the ground floor, and then shall be appropriately screened to minimize their visibility from public ways. And so I think, in either what I'll suggest next site plan review or special permitting process, the permit granting authority would have the ability to appropriately condition so that those ground floor units are screened, but it wouldn't be either prohibitive right off the bat or not visible from streets. So those would be the two suggestions as far as the definitions go. And what you have in front of you are a red line and then as edited. And then the second suggestion is really relative to a permitting path. And so for this, I just step back and say, currently, I think you have 4 self-storage facilities in town. I think they're all considered warehouse uses. So this isn't like a use that hasn't been allowed and now is trying to be allowed. It was allowed through a different permitting path, and now I think the town is looking to regulate that path. And so based on my experience in other municipalities and being here last time and hearing some of the concerns, the suggested language or suggested permitting path, I would say, because it's in the I and IGP, site plan review may be an appropriate mechanism, except where the premises that seeks the permit is within 300 feet of a residence or a residential zone. And if so, then it would be a special permit. It's a little bit of a nuance. I don't know that the board would glom onto that, but I think there are probably some spaces in the I and the IGP which make a lot of sense to have this use, and they're far enough distant from residential use where they probably won't be offensive at all. So the definitions, and then the permitting path are the 2 suggestions, and I'm happy to have a conversation about either of those if you'd like.
John, just, you didn't know yet. Just stop it.
Did I do it last meeting? Do I have to do it?
But he did say,
Well, you opened it, I guess.
yeah, let's just bring the public hearing back.
Bring the public hearing back.
Yeah, close enough.
Sorry about that.
I can say it all over now.
Yeah.
I can't.
Okay. So it seems like, the first one, purpose is just looking at it the first time here. I think almost that first language maybe would, I guess, be a catch-all, which might be a little bit easier to, do a lot of different things instead of saying as example, perhaps. That's just my initial reaction, just taking a look at it.
Let's clarify. It did bring the language over. It was technically approved with the mixed-use village as a definition. It just wasn't codified in the E-code. So the definition did come. I added the last sentence, or the last 2 sentences, any units to be accessed from the exterior on down. That's what I added. So
what do we, what does the board think?
all right.
Yep, the change. Yeah.
Still have a public hearing.
We do still have a public hearing. That is right. So thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Would anybody else, either on Zoom or on public? Come on up.
I'll be shy.
Good evening. I wasn't going to talk tonight. Okay, first of all, with all due respect, it wasn't technically approved. It was approved. It was approved after a public hearing of the council, and where the definition slipped through the cracks and didn't get moved to the E-code, it's on the list to move to E-code now. So it will be part of E-code as originally written. We're dealing with words here with regard to a definition. The indoor self-storage definition was what was crafted with the mixed-use village district bylaw, which still remains in full effect. So to change this now, it defeats the purpose of why the definition was created in the first place with the mixed-use village district. The building that was to be an indoor self-storage was to look like every other structure within the development. It was supposed to, look like apartments, except it wasn't apartments, it would be storage. And I see what's happening here and I understand it. I just don't want to lose sight of what was created for a bylaw that remains in full effect. The ground, the garage doors or whatever, the ground, I'm not sure how that would work in the mixed-use village district concept, but right now we don't have a plan before us, so I don't know.
We have design review.
Well, absolutely. But would this definition as proposed meet, because that's all the bylaw, all the mixed-use village district bylaw has, describing what an indoor self-storage is this definition. So
The one that's not amended here.
the original definition, which addressed household goods, excess supplies, archived records as examples, such facilities may be climate controlled, individually secured, and may have multiple stories with elevator access. All storage units to be accessed from within the building, and no storage unit shall be used as a residence. And I realize what's happening here, and I'm not against it. I just don't know how we can come up with a definition that serves both purposes.
Do we need to come up with a single definition? Do not leave the definition that we have for the multi-use zone. Create a new definition for industrial garden park.
That would be perfect. That would be perfect, because that would be
Call it
cleaner.
something different, so that the name is different, so it's clearly a different name, and that's easy to do. I'm sure Billy can put something there.
That's what I would
And
request.
have separate definitions for industrial garden park, and that way, what is appropriate for industrial is not appropriate for mixed village. I agree with you.
Okay,
So you need to do a little rewriting here, I think, and separate out the two.
and quite simply because we've already gone through a public hearing with the council and the original definition is adopted, I don't want to have to go through and change all that. That's it.
No, I think it's
Yeah, so I guess just procedurally, if the board is comfortable with the idea, potentially making a recommendation tonight, that way, Keith continues to move and we can work with, those changes and request to the council with those changes in mind. If you're comfortable, that's.
I would be open.
Yeah.
I would if I could get changed between.
Yeah, because I just don't want to have, multiple meetings if it's a small change and you're comfortable with it.
And at that, the council, then we could.
Yeah.
We are still in a public hearing, so is there anybody that wants to speak on this hearing, seeing that?
There's nobody on.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second that.
Made, motion's been seconded to close the public hearing. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
I would now like to address, I didn't catch your last name, sorry. Attorney Reedy's, about, retaining site plan versus special permit. I respectfully disagree with that. So if you look at industrial drive, Benton, and so forth area, a lot of those buildings are no longer being used for industrial. An example, like the kids' place at the corner of Benton and industrial. It's childcare. But I prefer that, that's not within 300 feet of a residence. In fact, I think probably the one that is then, the self-storage that is then kitty corner for that, they could be considerably 300 feet within the residential they would put a fence.
They abut, yeah.
Yeah, they abut, so, and the one self-storage that I was involved in here was at the corner, or was at the end of Mr. Baldwin. Very contentious. It was a site plan, it wasn't a special permit. Am I correct, George? Yeah. So we were somewhat hamstrung on what we could put for, conditions, even though that would have been 300 feet, I understand all of that. So I'm all in favor of keeping special permit. I think that's a wonderful change. So I'll make a motion to recommend and pass this along to town council with the proposed changes from Attorney Reedy, then you can massage it from there. I think you know that we're all in favor of you massaging it pursuant to what George had to say.
Thank you.
All right, motion's been made.
Just
Second.
Just to clarify, you said with Mr. Reedy's proposed changes, he also proposed a change to get a site plan. So I just want to clarify.
Okay, so without that.
Yeah.
In the event. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions, that carries. Okay, so we still have left director's report, Bailey. Any updates? I know we're looking at meeting schedule for the next couple of months.
Yeah, so I have two things today. Just the first one, just looking forward at our meeting schedule. May was a primary, but it wasn't needed, so we're fine with the first meeting there. So we'll be meeting May 2nd. We have already an agenda item. So June and July. June is an election day, the first meeting in June. I believe it's June 6th, and then July 4th is obviously a holiday. So I'm going to keep this on the agenda for the next coming meeting so we can reevaluate if we need to hold a special meeting during those 2 months, given the caseload and anything that I might bring. So June 6th, there's no meeting because it's a town election.
In July 1st, or
Yeah.
July 4th.
Yes.
But we will have a meeting May 2nd. Because of the
Yes. Please show up for that.
Yeah,
We're gonna put you right up front.
yes, yeah, I marked it in my calendar. So yeah, I guess the June and July is sort of on a case basis.
Yeah.
And also with this reorganization. So I think that's something for important. So whether we have something specific meeting that's tailored to reorganization, we'll just do it with the ones that we already have in place, either at the end of June. Is there a rule, do we have to reorganize before July 1st, or can we do it?
No.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I thought, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, it's preferred that we do it around that time.
Yeah.
The last thing is just, I sent an email to the board regarding the conflict of interest training that is required for everyone. I know everyone has already taken the training before, but they came up with a new system and now we have to do it through their new system. So everyone has to take it again. I actually received it a couple weeks ago. I just had time to do it on Monday, so I wanted to do it before I sent it out to all of you. So if anyone has any questions, I did it. It's easy. Let me know. I can help you.
And should we give you a receipt or indication?
Yeah, if you could, I just want to make sure that I have it in case
Anything
multiple reasons, but yeah, it should go directly to the clerks automatically, but just in case, send it to me if you can. And that's all I have.
All right, any other discussion, anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second, is further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Aye. Right. Thank you.
I was at the meeting that I made